Hi there, welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing an E-wrap cast on. Working today on the Empisal Knitmaster 321. The sample today that I'll be doing will be the popcorn or bobble stitch. As I know it, this is done by hand knitters, but you can do it on the knitting machine as well. So I thought it would be really nice to actually do a sample and just show you how it works. Once you finish your cast on, choose the number of stitches you're going to use. Here I'm working on 3 stitches for the popcorn stitch. So basically you need your gap, which will be 3 stitches, and your popcorn stitch, which is 3 stitches. So you'll be working with 6 stitches first. Make sure your front levers are to 1 and move the carriage over to the right so you can do your first row. You take 3 of those needles on the left side and those are put into holding position. This is where you do your first popcorn stitch. Make sure there's a weight underneath. I put it at an angle so that it can be easier to use. We do about 6 rows. You can do a bit more rows, but it can bunch up a bit. Or you can even do less rows. You can do about 4 to 6 rows. Once you go down your rows, this is where you're going to lift up the loops in order to create your first popcorn stitch. You take a loop from the left and a loop from the right and then a center loop, and you just pull them up into the needles that you're working with. As the camera's in front of me, you can see I'm struggling just a little bit to be able to see over the camera. And here is your center stitch. Just make sure they're pushed back. Then you work on the right side to take the first 3 needles into working position. This will be your gap, and the next 3 needles will be your next popcorn stitch that you'll be creating. So basically you'll be working with 1 row on 9 needles. And then you do 1 row, and this is where you start your next popcorn stitch. You take the 3 popcorn stitches that you have done and you put them into holding position, those needles that you've already done, and you take the gap that you're going to have into non-working position. And then the last 3 needles will be your next popcorn stitch that you're going to create. And then you create another 6 rows. Basically you just do a repeat of the very first stitches you started. You do another 6 rows here, and this will create the next stitch. It's very tricky, the small little bits that you have to work with. So just go slowly with it and you'll find it much easier. Here is where you got the 9 needles again. And what you do is you just make sure that those needles that are in holding position are, you know, and they're not, they're straight and they're even. Here I am lifting the stitches again to create the next popcorn stitch. This one was a little bit easier as the camera was at an angle, so I was able to see a little bit better. And then you repeat. You've got your gap, and then you've got the next popcorn stitch that you're going to create. So basically you'll have 9 stitches again, and this is a repeat pattern. Make sure that all the needles are in holding position or straight and even. And then you do your row over the 9 needles, and then you bring 6 of those needles into holding position. Tips for knitting. Here is a tip for knitting. Here I made a mistake where I did an extra stitch. So basically I'm just going to get the under loop, and I'm just going to take that yarn piece that I've done to bring it back to the correct number that I'd started. Sometimes you make mistakes in the knitting, and instead of redoing the work you can just fix it like I've done here. I've just taken that loop off, and you do a number of mistakes, so you know it's not the end of the world where you have to redo, like I say, redo the work. You just need to find ways to repair it, and you know, because it's very finicky bits and one does make mistakes. You will see that I've got some other pictures of loops that I've done. They were all fixable. You know, initially I thought, oh no, how am I going to fix this? But they are fixable, and you can just fix it as you go along. This work is really quite fine and detailed to work with, so you know, if you can fix it, it's a better way to do it. Here I'll be working on 7 stitches instead of 3 stitches to create the popcorn stitch. It just makes a different shape. You take your 3 needles as a gap, and then 7 needles that you'll be working with, and then you put the rest of the needles into holding position. Here you do your first row over those selected needles that you'll be working with, and here you take 3 of those needles into holding position, and you'll be working 12 rows for this 7 stitch popcorn effect. I wouldn't say it's a popcorn effect. It looks really interesting, and it was a little bit more difficult to work out. What I did was the first 6 rows, after the first 6 rows I stopped, and then I pushed the weight up so that it doesn't bunch at the top, and which could cause the loops to fall off. Once you've done your 12 rows, this is what it looks like, and then you go on the sides. I found it tricky to get the middle loops even, so what I did was I did the 2 side loops first so that they were positioned up, and then I just pushed it the actual bit into the middle so that I could see where the fold was, and then I used that as a baseline to put the other loops on. You can never be 100% accurate because it's really a lot of loops to work with, so this is how this came out. This was once you get into it, once you're doing a lot of it, it gets a little bit easier. But initially, as you start, as you go along, it just takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of remembering. You've got to really watch all the stitches and make sure that you don't drop any, and also that it's all evenly spaced. This is where I finally pushed the loops up, and this was the first stitch that I was working with. It's actually a lot of stitches, so here's your gap. This will be put into working position now. I had the camera right in front, so it was a little bit tricky to work with. And you know, you put these into working position. This will be your gap, as I said, and the next 7 needles will actually be your popcorn stitch. So here I'm putting it into working position, and this is where you'll be doing 1 row. Here I made a mistake almost because I didn't tighten the needles on the holder, so that nearly, but I got it on, and here it works really well. So here is all your stitches all together, which is a lot of stitches. So when you do this, make sure they're all even and all the loops are on, and also make sure you got your weights on because it's quite a big gap. So you really will need weights here in order to do this. When you do your this row, single row, just go slowly with it because you just don't want to drop any stitches. Here you will be putting, always sometimes you check that the latches are open. You know, if you're not sure about something. Here I wasn't sure about this one. Here is the first 7 stitches that I'm putting into holding position. Then this is the gap that I'm putting into holding position. And then the next 7 stitches will be the next popcorn stitch I'll be doing. Just make sure that the backs of these holding stitches are accurate. Sometimes when they're not in the correct position, then they can create a problem. Here is the finished work that I've done. Here's some holes. It came out alright. I was alright with this. I did a previous video, but I redid this video because I wasn't happy with the previous video, so I started this again. This is what it looks like on the back. The video that I did previously didn't have enough of this, so I wanted to show. You just got to watch out for holes. That's the one thing. Even if you do have holes, you could probably sew it closed when you finish the garment. What happens? But I really like the effect of it. It's really great, and I hope that this is of interest. Well, I just want to say thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe and leave a comment, and I will look at the next project. Thanks.